Hi, this is Chris Long with SSE Setup, and in this video we're going to look at just how easy it is to create and install with SSE Setup and just walk through some of its key features for you. So after you've installed and launched SSE Setup, you'll be here. This is the Launchpad. It is your project manager, and this is where you can edit existing projects and start new projects. You'll see right away here there's this test project that's already there. That's just there for you to mess around with, play around with, just a test project for you to mess around with. But you don't really need to, because really it's just as easy to start a new project and play around with that, which is what we're going to do, and that's what you're going to do when you start your new actual program project. And you'll see by default, though, it's set to create a new version project for the already existing test project that was there, that was selected there. And this, when you do actually create your install, your first install, it will can just be a real time saver for you, because you'll see that this new version project is set to already base it on that already existing project settings and so forth. So once you actually create your first install, then on subsequent times where you create installers for future versions of your software, it'll already base those on it will base that on your previous versions settings and so forth. So it can just be a real time saver. Again, just kind of a cool side note, but kind of a cool side note about SSE Setup is it just can really simplify things for you. Actually, this whole project management component of SSE Setup is something that actually a lot of installers do not really have, is a clear project management system like this. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and click this new button here, because we're going to start a completely brand new program here. And although it is actually going to be a test, it's still basically going to be a test program, but for example purposes. But and we'll go ahead and still put in 1.0 for the version. And this is what you would do when you start your new program for your new project. You would click that new button and enter in your program name and so forth. Now we need to specify our program's main file, and this is the file that is your main executable or whatever that users would use to start your program. And I'm going to go ahead, I'll go ahead and select this one here. It's already in that folder. And then you need to specify your company name and website. We'll call this, how about my really awesome, I can't spell, really awesome company. How about that? If we got a really awesome company, we ought to have a really awesome website. It just makes sense. Okay. And these are used in a couple of different places. Like the website might show in the Windows uninstall interface as the website for your program and so forth. Anyway, that's that, and you'll see by default it's set to start our project with a default template here, which is what we want. You could actually, even for a brand new program, you could actually choose to base it on a different already existing project, but we're just going to keep it on this default here and start our programs project with that. That's normally what you're going to want to do when you start a new program. Okay, so here we are now. It's opened up the editor. This is Booster. It's our project editor. And before I even talk about it and talking about any of the settings, I need to point out something else really cool, and that is that right now we actually already have a working install. We actually have an install that will install that main program file that I selected, that will create shortcuts to that on the desktop and start menu. And I'm going to prove that to you actually by clicking this test button here, and you're going to see it's going to come up here with the install, and there it is. It's already set to install. Welcome to Test App 1.0. Install the program files, put the shortcut. There's even a little boilerplate license agreement already there. I'm going to agree to that, and you'll see it's going to install. You'll see that shortcut appeared over here for the program on the desktop, and it's already set to open the program when I click OK, and I'm going to do that. And there it is. There's the program. I'm going to close that. So we actually already had an install there that worked and installed that file, that program executable, and put shortcuts to it. I'm going to go ahead and click test again here, and it knows it was already installed because we just installed it. And I'm going to click this uninstall show option, and it's going to show our uninstaller now, which is just what users would see if they went to the uninstall interface to uninstall the program. And I'm going to agree to uninstall it here, and you'll see it just now it removed it. And I'm going to click OK here. And now it's uninstalled it, but now it's going to launch the install again. Since we did click that test option, it assumes we want to test the install again, which we don't. We already did that. I'm going to click cancel there. But now here we are. I just wanted to show you that we do already have it installed. It's just a matter now of just tweaking it to have all the settings we actually want and install other files we need to install and so forth. But here we are on this main page here, this program info page, and you'll see there's the name and the version. It's already set to install the program files with a subfolder of the name and version by default. You can change that if you want to another folder, although users do usually expect program files as and I recommend you normally leave that there. That's what users normally expect software to be installed. And you could remove the version if you wanted to from the subfolder. You could make it just have the program name. But I do normally, I do typically recommend that you leave the version in there. It's just for clarity purposes, especially if you have multiple versions of your software. That if they each install to their own folder that's unique with the version name in it, could just make it a little more clear for users. But otherwise, you could remove it if you wanted to. And I'm just going to leave it there in the default. This is a brand new program installation. In the future, when you start a new version project, when you start a new project there in that project manager, that's based on this version, it'll automatically be changed to show a different option, which would be this application with upgrade support, so that you could then upgrade previous versions, and that's a whole other topic we're not going to get into in this video. But just creating this first install here. If your program is a 64-bit program, you would select this option here, and that just tells setup to make that work as it should, to disable 32-bit operating systems and make it go for the 64-bit program files folder and so forth. All right, I'm going to go to the next page here, which is our prerequisites page, and this is where you can disable support for certain operating systems. You'll see by default it's already set to not allow install on operating systems before Windows 7, but you could change that real easily, or make it just go for, say, XP Service Pack 3 and greater, whatever. However you wanted to do it, you can do that. Block maybe the first couple versions of Windows 10, however you want to do it. You can control that. You could also control which hardware your program requires, and select that here, and so that your install will enforce those. I want to talk about these settings up here, which are a little complicated, but so by default, like most installers, your install will require administrator privileges, which means that non-admin users, which would be standard people with standard user accounts on Windows, would not be able to run your install. If they try to run your install, it will bring up a thing asking them to enter in administrator password and so forth, so that they can run your install. You can actually create installs though that don't do that, where they're able to run them as themselves without having to enter in administrator credentials and not seeing that UAC dialog. And you do that just by selecting this option, and then you'll get some information on that here. And there's more information in the help file as well. But basically what it boils down to is you need to make sure your install doesn't do things that non-admins can't do, like writing files to locations that they wouldn't have write access to and so forth. You can also make it so that administrator users are also treated as non-admins, so that they also wouldn't see the UAC prompt, because administrator users by default on modern OSs also would bring up that a UAC dialog that they have to click on to agree to run your install with elevated administrator privileges. And again, that's all standard. That's how most installers work. But you could also, again, you can make that so that that wouldn't be the case for them either. So those are options for you if you want to go that route. You also, by default, when a non-administrator user runs your install as an administrator, they enter in those administrator credentials, those admin password. This is by default what it does is it will run the install with those administrator privileges, but it will actually install using the non-admin profile. The user that actually started the install, that non-admin user, will use their profile for installing files and in the registry and so forth. So, which is normally what they're probably going to expect. A number of installers actually don't do that. They install in that scenario using under the admin profile, which is another option here you could actually use. But this generally makes more sense, and it's something that SSE setup offers to you by default. And so that's that. Down here I want to talk about this. This is a very powerful part of SSE setup. It's kind of unassuming down here, but it's really powerful. This is where you specify other software that your program needs, that your program requires in order for it to run. This is where you can have that other software required, and make sure that it exists on the user's machine, and that if it doesn't, that it's installed. So by default here, if you double click this, you'll get a bunch of different preset prerequisites that already come with SSE setup. For instance, like different versions of the .NET framework. You can also create your own prerequisites here, and you would click that new prerequisite option there, and then you could specify your own conditions of things to look for whatever software you're wanting to look for on the user system. And then if it doesn't find it, to run an included installer program that you include, or to download an installer and run that. So those are options for you. I'm going to select this preset one for the .NET Framework 4.8. And you'll see by default here, it's if those conditions are not met, if the .NET Framework 4.8 does not exist, it's going to allow the user to download and install it from within setup. And I'm going to show you already. I'm just going to click this test button again over here. And I don't have the .NET Framework 4.8 on this machine here, so you're going to see here when it comes up that it's going to tell us that I don't have that. There it is, telling me I need that to install my test app here, and that I can easily download and install this component by clicking this option, which I'm going to do, and show you this here. And you'll see it's now downloading it. And if I let it continue on, it would download and install it, and then continue on with the installation of my program. I'm going to go ahead and cancel it because I don't need to do that, but that's how that works. It's going to tell us because I canceled it that it failed, and it's actually going to bring up when you cancel out there, it actually brings up a manual download page for them to have like a second chance to try to install it. Anyway, that's how that goes, and I'm going to. That's what that's for. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I don't need that line there, but that's what that's for. So this next page here is the installer looks page, and where you can control the visual appearance of your installer and button styles and graphics that are shown. I'm actually going to go ahead and pick a different graphic here. We'll go ahead and pick this one here. But there's a bunch of graphics for you to choose from, different options and things you can do. You can have different messages shown on startup, or when they successfully install your program, you can have custom messages shown, or if they try to change the installation folder, you can have a welcome message that's shown welcoming them to your program. You can do that. So that's how that goes. In fact, I'll go ahead and select that. And click next. And this next page here is the language and license text page. So SSE Setup is a multilingual installer, and it supports a lot of the world's biggest languages by default. You'll see they're already enabled here. You don't need to do a thing to have this support. It's already there. And again, this is kind of a unique thing compared to a lot of other installers. This support's already there. It's ready to go. If you do want to force a specific language, you can do that. Like if I wanted to force just English, I could do that. Or if I want to disable certain languages, I could do that. Again, what you might want to do if your program itself does not support these languages, you might want to, just for clarity's sake, so it doesn't confuse the user, you might want to make it match with whatever your program supports. But otherwise, it will use whatever the user's language is. It will detect that, and if that's the language for them, it will show install to them in their language. So. And some of these you can test even if you're, a lot of times, sometimes the Asian languages are harder. It depends on your operating system and whether you have support for that already installed or not, whether you're able to test that if you're not one of those users, if you don't normally use those languages. But for some of these languages, like I can test this French one here, by just forcing it here, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to click this test button here again, and it's gonna bring this up here, and you'll see, there's that welcome message that I selected to include a welcome message. There's the changed graphic that I made. I already made that change earlier as well. And you'll see now it's in French as well. And so now our installer's in French because I forced that language. So that's how that goes, and you can have different license agreements for each of the languages in their languages, and then for ones where you haven't specified those, this default text is used, and you'll see there's already this boilerplate license agreement there. This boilerplate license agreement here, down here, and again, just a sample, something you obviously might want to change for when you create your install, but I won't guarantee you how, just how great this is. It's just a sample there for you. But here we are now on this next page. That's the install files page. And this is kind of the heart of the beast. This is where you install your files that you need to install. You'll see by default that, again, that program that we started it with is already set to install into the install/program folder, which is the folder. This is the folder where the user has allowed your program to be installed. This is your program installation folder. And so you can install any other files you need to install, a help file maybe, or an icon file. Any files your program needs, you're going to need to install. If you have any DLLs or ActiveX controls, OCX files, things like that, you would need to install those as well. For COM DLLs and ActiveX controls, those kind of things, you're going to probably want to install those into the system folder, either 32-bit or 64-bit, depending on if they're 32-bit or 64-bit controls or DLLs, and then they'll automatically be registered and be set to go for your program there. But other files for your program, you'd just probably want to go put in your install program folder. I got a README file here. I can install that. You could also put it in subfolders. You could have my subfolder, and it would put that in a subfolder. You could also install an entire folder full of files. So if you'd had a folder full of images you need to install, you could select that. Here, what's that? Okay, well, you will select that folder. And by default, it'll also include, when you select the folder, it'll include all subfolders and their files as well. So basically, you can install an entire subfolder, an entire folder structure with one line. So you can install a whole bunch of files at once. And again, it's going to default there into that install program folder. In any subfolders that are there, it will automatically create the subfolders under the program folder there and install those files. So now, if you did want to install those to a different location, you could do that. For instance, if you wanted to, let's say we wanted this in the user documents folder. User documents, maybe with a subfolder of test app images. I don't know. There we go. How about that? So you can install your folder there into the user documents folder, with the test app images subfolder in the user documents folder. You could do something like that. So anyway, that's how that works. I'm going to remove that line. We can keep the README line there. That's fine. This button down here will show you, from the point of view of the user system, how the files are organized there. Just show you, make it clear for you. So that's what that's for. This next page here is the shortcuts page. And before we really talk about that, I just need to point out, you'll notice by default there's all these bullet points here, and a number of the other pages you might have noticed have those as well. You'll see that, and that just gives you the pertinent information for that page. Just give you kind of the key bullet point help points you might need for the settings on that page. But for more detailed information on any page that you're on, you click this help button down here or press F1, and full help for the page that you are on will appear with detailed help for the settings. SSE setup does come with pretty complete documentation, so but it's geared in such a way to be pretty logically organized and point out the key things. But then if you need more information, and sometimes you might, then you just click that help button and it'll appear for you. So here we are. We've got these two shortcuts already there. It's already set for our program. One on the start menu, one on the desktop. And again, you could change it so that it doesn't have the version. If you wanted to remove the version from that, you could. Or you could leave that in there. It doesn't matter. But you could create additional shortcuts. You could create a shortcut to your uninstaller in the start menu there. And if you have more than one, going to the start menu programs folder, it will group those together in a subfolder of your program name for you. So that's something you could do. If you need to start your program with certain command line arguments, you could do that. Change the icon that's used for the shortcut, you could do that. This option here, this no UAC, is kind of a cool option, kind of a unique thing to SSE setup, a pretty unique thing, and that is that if your program does require administrator privileges, a lot of programs these days are not created where they don't require that, but if yours does, where it would normally show a UAC dialog when the user starts your program, you can select this option here on any shortcuts, and then when the user starts your program with those shortcuts, it would not show that UAC dialog, but would still be able to start it with administrator privileges. And that uses legitimate stuff, legitimate Microsoft stuff. That's not anything that's not appropriate or anything like that, but it uses legitimate stuff to do that. But that is a kind of a cool option of SSE setup. You could also, you'll see by default it's set to install the shortcuts into the user for the current user, but you could also make it go for all users. You could have the shortcuts by default be set to install for all users on the machine instead. Then you can also have it so that the user could choose to install whether they want to install the program for just themselves or for all users, and it would then automatically switch it to the right ones. And whether you can also control whether they are able to choose to install desktop shortcuts or start menu shortcuts and so forth. So that's how that works. And now this next page is the registry page. If you need to make any registry changes, if your program uses the registry, you can create, set, delete values and create keys there and do all that and set that all up for your program to be able to use. This next page here is the associations and ACL page. If you want to make any file associations with your program where your program will open certain file types, this is where you can do that, and you can give the user a choice in that. They can choose to associate your program with certain file types. This whole section down here is pretty advanced stuff, pretty complicated stuff, but SSE setup actually makes it pretty simple, or about as simple as it can be anyway. You still kind of have to understand the basics of what these things are, and there's a little bit of that in the help file as well. But you could modify permissions on either installation or uninstallation. Say for the current user, you could make a certain folder or file have full permissions or read-only permissions, and so forth. And you can modify permissions on the system with that. And same with privileges. You could add system privileges for the current user, for all users, for just administrator users. You could add or remove privileges, and so those are things you can do. These do require well, they don't require, but actually I can't fully remember. Oh, this one won't. It tells you right there it won't work on a non-admin if you're running it if you're allowing install for just non-admins to run as themselves, where they don't have to on that prerequisites page where they don't have to require administrator privileges, then you can't use this. And this one you can, but you probably wouldn't want to. For anything you're going to really want to change of any notable value, you're going to probably need to have administrator privileges. Anyway, the next page here is the miscellaneous page, and this is that program that's set to automatically open at the end of install on a successful install. You could also have a README option that showed, which since we did install a README file, I can do that. And have that one maybe not selected by default, so the user would have to specifically select to have that README file opened at the end of install. You could do that. You could do other things. There's all sorts of other features. You could do things like having a survey page opened when the user uninstalled your program. You could have it open a survey page where you could ask them why they uninstalled. Down here, you could change by default it's set to use the icon of your program to show in the uninstall interface, but you could change that if you installed another icon file. You could have it not create system restore points, which it does normally do. It won't do it by default on your machine as the developer, because with all your testing and so forth, it would create a lot of system restore points. But normally outside of your machine, outside of development machine, it will create a system restore point at the start of install, which can add a little bit of time to, while it's creating that, it can take a little bit of time to do that. So, but that's just for the user's protection. But if you want to disable that for your install, you can just click that, and that will disable that from creating system restore points by default. And there's other things here. It automatically will detect if there's conflicting programs and so forth and allow those to be closed, so that your install won't end up requiring a reboot or something like that, because it couldn't install files, so it'll automatically close any conflicting programs. This next page here is this Run Programs page, and this page allows you to run other software that you might want to run. Now, if you need to run other software to install other to install other software that your program might need, again, you would not really want to use this page. Normally, you would use the prerequisites page that we talked about earlier and create a custom prerequisite for that software so that you can check the user's machine to see if they already have that software installed, and then only if they don't to run the installer, as opposed to just running the installer indiscriminately no matter what, which is what this page would do. But you could run other executables here. You could also do the same thing on uninstall. For the uninstaller, you could have that. And then this page here is the uninstall files page, and this allows you. This is an important page actually. If your it automatically will uninstall files that are installed, but this page is for other files that your program might create that setup doesn't know about because it didn't install those files. So if your program creates other files and so forth, this is where, if you know what those files are, you'd want to specify those so that the uninstaller knows about them, so that it can automatically remove them during uninstall. If you don't do that, then what will happen is the uninstaller might detect those other files and tell the user, "Hey, we found some other files that the program didn't. This program didn't create. Do you want to delete? Do you want to, or that this? Sorry. Let me start over on that. It might show the user a dialog telling them that it found other files that your program might not have created or that might not have been installed by your program. It found these other files and want to know if they want to create them or want to keep them or delete them, and give them that option. That's why if your program does create other files, you just want to specify them here. Like, let's say if your program created a file named file1.dat in the program folder, then by telling this then the uninstall will just automatically remove that. Will remove that file. It will know that that's a part of your program and will remove that during uninstall. So that's what this page is for. I'm going to remove that line, but that's what that's for. The next page is the uninstall registry page to make registry modifications on uninstall. And then this page here is the internet updating page. And this is another really cool part of SSE setup that a lot of other installers don't have. This SSE setup has its own internet update module. So you don't need to have it. You don't need to have another third-party solution or try to code your own, create your own. It automatically has this ability for you to. You could have a check for updates option in your software that interfaces with this internet update module that will check for new versions of your software, and if there's a new version available, it can download and install that, close the old version, open up the new version, and just make for a real seamless experience for the user. And you could, if you're interested in doing something like that for your program, you just click this information here, and information on that will open, and you just walk through the guide and follow the information, and you can have that going for your software. So this here is the Your Info page, and you'll see some of these settings we had already provided and used in a couple different places. This here is the digital signature section for if you have a code signing certificate, which most software developers these days should probably have a code signing certificate. It's just kind of a necessary thing these days. And this allows you to sign your installer with that certificate, and any program, any of your program that you're installing, you can sign those as well. So if you don't know what a digital signature is, or you don't know if you need one, or how to get one, and how that all works, you can click this button here and it'll tell you all about that, and also explain how that all works with SSE setup. It's actually really easy. Once you have the certificate, it's really easy to use it with SSE setup. And again, not only just sign your installer and everything related to that, but also sign your actual program, have it all done in one step automatically, and be able to do that every time when you create your install. Just have your files are signed, and you don't need any third-party software to do that. You don't need to install anything else. It's a part of SSE setup to handle that all for you. Okay, this final page here is the save page, and we're basically done now. We can either just save our project, save our settings, and not do anything else, or what you're going to want to do is to save, create a distribution, which creates, these are your final distribution packages. These are the packages that you would use to actually give to other users, to actually use to test your install, to run your install. This is what you'd put on your website, whatever, for users to download. You can create an exe package, a zip file setup package, or a CD or DVD install. package, and you could even have it burn the CD or DVD for you. You would also use this for any other read-only media that you might have. But I'm just going to create this, keep it on the self-extracting archive with that file name, and you could have it create the distribution, or you could have it create it and even have it publish it with FTP to your website. I'm just going to go ahead and create it here, and it's going to go ahead and create our installation package here, and it's going to automatically come up here, open an Explorer window to the where it created the file, and there it is, and there's our installer. This is what we would give to other users. I'm going to go ahead and double click it here. I'm looking at a UAC. I was just looking at a UAC dialog there that you couldn't see for technical reasons on the video. It doesn't show, but there was a UAC dialog I had to agree to. And anyway, here we are now on the main screen, and there it is. There's our install. And you saw that welcome window that appeared as well. It looked like it maybe had a little bit of a flicker in it because of probably because I'm recording this video as well right now. But anyway, but here we are. We've got our install here. I'm going to go and cancel that because we already walked through that earlier. But close that out. But that is how you create and install with SSE Setup. And we walked through a number of the key features, and hopefully you were able to see just how easy it is. There are other features as well that we didn't talk about, and other things you can do. Those are described in the documentation in the help file. There's some other cool features and things you can do, but those are a lot of the key ones. And anyway, I hope this video has been of help to you, and thank you for watching.